as someone who is a huge fan of Magical Girl shows, what do you think of the new show, Magical Girl Friendship Squad? I love hearing you ramble about stuff in general. You're very well versed. Thank you so much. I had not heard of this show until this ask, so I had to go and look it up and find episodes because we don't have the sci-fi channel in my country, it turns out. So I had not heard of this show at all, but I could tell from the title it was a Western Magical Girl show. Very often you can always tell when an American or a Western studio is trying to make a Magical Girl show without it actually being one from Japan. By the way they structure their titles. It's never just descriptive of the show, which is what the Japanese titles are. You know, you got like Maho Shoujo Creamy Mami, which is Magical Girl Creamy Mami. Or it'll be like Cardcaptor Sakura, you know. She's a girl, her name is Sakura, she is the card captor, she captures cards. Or Revolutionary Girl Utena, which is Shoujo Kakume Utena. It's always very descriptive, whereas when a Western studio tries to do a Magical Girl show and they want you to know it's a Magical Girl show in terms of like what anime does, they'll always title it in a very heavy-handed way. I don't know if it's because they like... It makes me think like, you know how you have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? That's almost what Western studios to me title their Magical Girl shows as. So yeah, Magical Girl Friendship Squad. Like you can immediately hear it's not... It's a Western show. It's not a Japanese anime. But I went to go looking for episodes and I didn't watch them because I don't like having other people's opinions influence me before I watch something. But I was seeing a lot of YouTube titles like, is this the worst cartoon ever made? Or like, is this the worst Magical Girl show ever made? So even not having watched or read anything, I was like, okay, I better brace myself because this is either going to be like a misunderstood show and it's not that bad, or it's going to be like a pile of garbage. So I downloaded 3 episodes, which was all I could find at the time. I watched the first one. I had full intention to watch all 3, but I watched the first one and I can't. I'm sorry, I can't with this. And I know that kind of spoils my thoughts as a whole right at the start of this video, but... okay. So, to give a walkthrough of the episode, just of this show specifically, because I've got other things I want to talk about regarding this. First of all, I heard people complain, just like the vibe I was getting in like the YouTube titles and such is that the show is very quote-unquote badly animated. I wouldn't say the animation is good. It's not good animation, but it's not the worst animation I've ever seen. It's not even the worst animation I've seen from like a big cable company. I think that's the word. We have satellite TV here. I've seen worse cartoons on Nickelodeon. I've seen worse cartoons on Cartoon Network. I've seen worse cartoons from the Disney Channel in terms of like physical animation. This isn't the worst, but it's not good. It does look very cheap or inexperienced to me. A big tell is right away, right in the first scene, you see the characters walking towards the coffee shop. And I can tell that the legs, as they move, have like a plug-in animation of these are the legs so that they can animate the body on top differently. Like independently, but the problem is it looks disjointed. Daisy, the one character you can tell is like really off balance, and Daisy for whatever reason doesn't have a head like a bob as she's walking. That's like one of the first things you learn about a walk animation. If you've got like a cartoon and you have 0 budget so you can't show the legs moving, you just bob the character up and down on screen and that's how you know they're walking. And this character is in full body in a walk cycle and she doesn't have a bob. It's very, very weird. And like a walk cycle, it's one of the hardest things to really nail when you do animation. But because of that, it is also one of the very, very first things you really learn how to animate when you're in college, because it's something you're going to be animating for your entire career. As long as you work with human characters, you will have to animate a walk cycle. So, like I said, that's why this strikes me as either very cheap or very inexperienced or both. As for character designs, design-wise, what I felt was the people who made this show, they either really like Steven Universe or they like how popular Steven Universe was, if you understand what I mean. The designs kind of remind me of that. They're not the worst. I do feel the color composition of Daisy is not great. Her color scheme doesn't feel like coordinated enough. It feels a little bit picked at random. The other character, sorry, I can't be bothered to remember her name. I think it's like Alex or something. Her colors are better, but it's like budget Steven Universe, because say what you want about Steven Universe, I've said a lot. One place it has zero problems with is its color design. Like, the colors in that show, from the first episode to the last episode, are brilliant. Like, the colors are so good in that show. So this kind of comes across as like the cheaper bootleg Steven Universe visually. Another thing was, I was a minute and 40 seconds in, and I wrote down extremely reference heavy, and not in the way that I talked about in my previous video, where I felt like the person making the show had things they like and they wanted to remind you of them, so much as, hey fellow kids, these are things that I like too, I'm just as cool as you guys. Because like, it's referencing like John Wick, and like especially John Wick 3 specifically, and it came across a little desperate.
Like for me, before that off-brand snack company fired me for tweeting that the green M&M could get it, I watched John Wick 2 last night. Kick, Chun-Li!
Oh, I love that movie!
So, okay, then it started bringing in the woke points. And this is a thing I see a lot of cartoons do, at least the cartoons that are like very, very specifically trying to appeal to a millennium and a Gen Z audience, is they give lip service to ideas and concepts which are very important to millennials and Gen Z kids, like capitalism bad and environment decline and things like that. They'll mention those things, but they won't actually discuss those things. They'll just bring them up in hopes that the younger audience will go, oh, it's talking about things that we discuss in our circles and spheres a lot. So they understand those things without actually saying anything about it. So that was kind of a red flag immediately. And I could tell that was going to get very, very insufferable as the show went on. And I'm sure it would have if I could suffer through more than one episode. But that's far from, I didn't even get as far for that to be a problem. It's just I recognized it immediately. And that's another like really desperate ploy to appeal to a demographic, is to give lip service to things that are very deeply important to people, but not do anything with it. Just be like I said, just like, hey fellow kids, it's kind of gross and cringy. It's cringy. Next is, it started getting like really horny on main, and I became confused like whether this was a genuine attempt at a magical girl show or if it was trying to be a parody. Because at first it does it in a way where it's not as blatant with the sexual references. It was doing it in a way that was just like suggestive and kind of like nudge nudge wink wink. So I was like, well, maybe this is just like a flying over kids' heads jokes, because a lot of cartoons would do that. But by the end of the show, it is so sexual. It's like super sexual in a way that only adult cartoons do. You know how an adult cartoon will try very, very hard to make you realize it's an adult cartoon by being as immature as possible, by focusing on body functions and sex and drugs and things like that, and they'll hyper focus on these things to be like, oh, we're not for kids, by having these jokes that kind of only kids would find funny, right? But anyway, the horny on main seemed kind of referential at first, but it becomes very, very apparent that this is not for kids. As soon as Daisy and, I think, Alex return to their apartment after having a run-in with the landlady who called them lazy millennials, because again, we're trying to capture a younger audience's interest, and they meet the mascot character, who's a red panda, and the mascot character, in order to tell them the threat to their universe that they're supposed to save the world from, she has to impart this information in like a vision by having them shove their fingers up her ass. And that is the point I literally wrote down in my notes, oh, it's one of these. And right there I was like, okay, you know what, this is going to be a sit to finish this episode, and it was. So it's doing like things get so immature after this. They shove their fingers up the mascot character's ass. She says, oh, choose important items to be your weapons, and Alex, I think, takes her bong and Daisy takes her birth control pills because drugs, am I right, kids? and then the birth control pills because let's make fun of Star Gentle Uterus once again, because we can't reference Sailor Moon without poking fun at attack names, but we're only going to make fun of Star Gentle Uterus, even though a lot of the attack names in Sailor Moon are really silly. As an aside, the reason the attack names in Sailor Moon are really silly is because you have a Japanese writer who doesn't speak English very well, if at all, writing English attack names in a language she can't really speak, because just as Japanese is like considered cool and trendy amongst teenagers in America, so English is considered cool and trendy amongst teenagers in Japan. So the same way like you get like badly translated Japanese characters as tattoos, you get badly translated English phrases in anime. That's why that happened. It doesn't change the fact that Star Gentle Uterus is an insane attack name. It's Sailor Star Maker who has that attack, and I think what Naoko Takeuchi was trying to do, she was trying to do like something with Star Creator and, you know, womb uterus, that kind of thing. I just think it's one of those times when a English speaker should have like helped her in terms of like a proofreader or something. But hey, that's what we're stuck with. But anyway, so we've got birth control pills as a weapon because we have to make fun of their ridiculous Sailor Moon names. They even like stopped the entire show to make fun of ridiculous attack names using a birth control pill. And I actually thought the bong weapon was kind of cool, because magical girls very rarely use real weapons as weapons. There's like Sailor Uranus that uses a sword, but she never uses the sword as a sword. It's like the original Legend of Zelda where it shoots lasers. Magical girls don't really use things like swords or nunchucks or bow staffs or like actual traditional weapons. Magical girls don't use those. So I actually thought the bong weapon was kind of funny and kind of cool because it looked a little like a keyblade to me, which might have been on purpose. But again, then it's completely undercut by the birth control joke, which it's one of those things of taking a joke too far, I feel. So they defeat the bad guy, who is a weed plant because, haha, drugs, am I right, kids? And, you know, you have the main bad guy who's pulling all the strings in the background, and he's like flamboyantly gay in a way that has stopped being funny since the 90s. You know what I mean? Like that kind of gay, like not just gay, like that kind of gay, where the fact that the character is flamboyantly gay is like, it's like a point to ridicule the character for. It's like, we shouldn't take this bad guy seriously because he's this very specific kind of gay. It's really bad. It's really cringe. But, which again, doesn't really make sense because even in the very first season of Sailor Moon, we had gay characters, and at no point in time in Sailor Moon was the fact that the characters were gay a point for us to not take them seriously. We always took the bad guys seriously, no matter how flamboyantly gay they were, and the fact that they were flamboyantly gay was never a reason to mock them. It just happened to be a part of the character. And this happened more than a few times. The first season you had a gay couple and the bad guys. The second season you had like a weird relationship between Diamond and Sapphire, which I don't really want to go into. And in the third season, not so much. In the fourth season, you have the Amazon trio, which includes Fisheye, who at the time is written to be a gay man, but in the year 2020, I almost see that character as being trans, because if you've seen the show, you understand what I mean. I think they might have actually done so in the musicals, which I'll get to at a point. Anyway, so my point is, I don't, like, the only joke I can gather from this kind of thing is, ha ha ha, the characters in Sailor Moon are really, really flamboyantly gay and like flaming queens. Ha ha ha. Isn't that funny that we're supposed to take them seriously because they're flaming gay queens? I can't. So this show, and I feel this kind of extends to Western magical girls when they try and be magical girls with their intention. They all do this. They tend to be trope savvy when it comes to magical girls, but only on a surface level. And even then, they always seem to only have Sailor Moon as a source of reference. Without giving an entire history lesson, because that's something you can make like an hour video about, is the history of magical girls. I have not watched every single magical girl show. There's like over 100 or something, I think, stretching all the way back to Mahotsukai Sally from like 1966, which has way too catchy a theme song. That theme song is like really, really a giant earworm. You're gonna listen to it and you're gonna be like, what the hell, this doesn't sound great. This is like really screechy, and then it's gonna hit the chorus and it's gonna be stuck in your head for like a week. But like, magical girls as a genre stretches back very, very long, you know, and there's so much there, you know. We're not just talking about Sailor Moon and maybe one or two other shows. We are talking about decades of content here. The intent of a magical girl show at its heart, and this is almost all magical girl shows save like very, very specific examples. The intent of a magical girl show is to teach girls that you can protect your loved ones without being physically strong or sacrificing your femininity. Unlike in the West, where you have feminine figures such as Wonder Woman, the way that she is a feminist figure is to depict her as the statuesque Amazonian, you know, warrior. She has that sense of power about her just in the way she stands, and the way she looks, and the way she handles herself. And then when you go into like the actual fight scenes where she is a physical fighter, but even if you remove that, she has the symbolism of being a physically strong person. Whereas in magical girl shows, almost always the magical girls are teenage or preteen girls. And magical girl shows teaches girls that you can change the world for the better and protect your loved ones and fight for what you believe is right using your own power without it having to be physical strength. You don't have to be an MMA fighter to be able to have positive influence on the world and be a symbol of strength and like have something that you believe in and stand for, and to change things for the better, protect people. That is at its core what magical girl shows are about. If you strip away everything else, even if you strip away things like fighting bad guys, like that is what it's about, is changing the world or yourself for the better without having to be like the president or an MMA fighter or a wrestler. You know, you can be yourself and still have change. There are some exceptions, such as Revolutionary Girl Utena being a deconstruction of women's role in society, or Madoka Magica, which was a show criticizing girls for having aspirations and goals. I actually really like the first season of Madoka Magica because somehow it still has an empowering message, despite the creator's intent to shame girls for having aspirations beyond just staying in the kitchen. This sounds like I'm making it up, but I'm sadly not. I'm sorry. Madoka Magica is kind of a sticking point. But anyway, so I don't understand when Western shows try to intentionally make a magical girl show, they only reference Sailor Moon. Now, Sailor Moon is as big as Dragon Ball Z, especially in the West, you know? Like the cultural impact, the size of its fan base, the entire scope of Sailor Moon as a franchise is like the female version of Dragon Ball Z in terms of just like how big a deal it is. And it aired on, I believe it aired on American televisions in the early 2000s or late 90s, around the same time DBZ got its English dub. So despite Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball Z being quite a few years apart in terms of broadcast in Japan, in the West they were broadcasted around the same time. But even considering that, there were other magical girl shows that aired on American televisions. I know for a fact Cardcaptor Sakura did, you know? It didn't have the impact of Sailor Moon, and it doesn't have as big a fan base, but it's got a pretty big fan base all on its own, and like people know about Cardcaptor Sakura. And yet, when I see Western cartoons try and purposefully make a magical girl show, they only focus on Sailor Moon. Maybe Utena, like the new She-Ra cartoon did, but for the most part, it's like Sailor Moon is the only magical girl that these shows have any interest in looking into. So if we were to look at like magical girls as a genre, right? Apart from Princess Knight and Cutie Honey, before Sailor Moon, magical girl shows were about using magic to become a pop star or an adult or fixing interpersonal relationships, you know. There were lots of magical girl shows before Sailor Moon, but they were never about being somebody who fights bad guys and saves the world. And the reason for this is because Sailor Moon was more inspired by like Super Sentai shows than it was by like Creamy Mummy or Angel Sweetmint. It was more inspired by a Super Sentai. That was kind of the core inspiration, and then like a little bit of Cutie Honey. Even though Cutie Honey was kind of meant to be like this sex comedy, there were things in Cutie Honey that Naoko Takeuchi really enjoyed. So a lot of that was put into Sailor Moon, especially the transformation sequence, because the transformation sequences in Sailor Moon were not a thing in the magical girl genre, apart from like Cutie Honey, and even then like Cutie Honey's transformation scenes are a little different. But Sailor Moon, every single show that came after Sailor Moon had transformation sequences, except for like Cardcaptor Sakura, because Sakura's magical girl outfits, they're not magical. They're literally made for her by her friend. They're not like a transformation. They're handmade outfits. But apart from that, almost every single magical girl show after Sailor Moon had transformation sequences, and their transformation sequences were very distinct and like separate from Sailor Moon. It wasn't just redoing Sailor Moon's transformation sequences. They were like visually distinct. They were obviously different. However, when a Western show is purposefully trying to make a magical girl show, they emulate Sailor Moon with its ribbons and the like sparkly background. Like they're always referencing the Sailor Moon transformation sequence. They don't try and like build their own magical transformation sequence. They don't try and build their own iconography. Not even just what magical girl shows did or do, but what Sailor Moon does, like over and over again. And very often, if like the magical girl show is trying like this magical girl friendship squad, when they're trying to like parody the tropes of magical girls, they will sexualize the transformation sequence. And I don't know, I don't want to say I don't know why, because I know why, but it always seems like, I don't know if this is like a cultural thing because I'm not American, but it's like the super focus on sex and sexualization in American media specifically is very strange to me. It's kind of gross. I don't know why you guys do this.
In the name of the moon, I will punish. Oh my God!
What was it? Oh man! Oh, I don't know.
I didn't know! I swear I didn't know! I mean, look at the way they're drawn, man! I thought they were college, or at the very least late high school. Wouldn't you have made that guess? Come on, look at the way they're showing them off! I swear, audience, I had no idea their real age. I mean, you might be saying to yourself, oh, what, didn't you grow up watching the show? Didn't you pay attention to it at all? No, I didn't! I mean, I watched it, but I didn't.
But yeah, as soon as you do a parody of a magical girl show, they feel the need to like hypersexualize the transformation sequence, and it's, I don't know, it's like such low-hanging fruit, you know, it's such an obvious joke to make. But as a result, it causes like magical girl by intent Western shows to always come across as Sailor Moon bootlegs or parodies, depending on their tone. Like even if that's not what they're going for, that's what they come across as. Or like this magical girl friendship squad, they come across as like tonally confused. It seems confused and inexperienced on like a conceptual stage, while also being desperate to carve out a style of its own, while also paying homage to things that the creators like, or like things they want to remind you of. It reminded me of this show that the studio I used to work for did, and I don't know if that's simply an indicator of inexperience or not, but I kept thinking about that. But even when they try and do a straight magical girl show, Western creators still always lean on Sailor Moon as their one reference, and I see it over and over and over again, you know. Every time they like do a show that has any kind of magical girl influence, it's Sailor Moon. Which is especially weird when you realize when Western studios don't try to make a quote-unquote magical girl show, the West has its own like background and history of magical girl shows. Not counting like the Powerpuff Girls, which is more like a superhero show with anime influence in it. Like there's references from Dragon Ball Z in Powerpuff Girls, there's references to Godzilla movies. It's more like a generalized parody and comedy show, but I count it more as like a superhero show. But even if you ignore Powerpuff Girls, there are things like Princess Starla and the Jewel Riders, which is about 3 girls protecting their magical kingdom from bad guys using jewel that give them cool outfits and powers, and they like ride winged horses, you know? And there's stuff like Gem and the Holograms, which yes, is a magical girl show. It's about a girl using an item to transform into a pop star. There's like 50 other magical girl anime that have that exact premise, like even Creamy Mummy, that's like one of the most foundational magical girl shows, is about a girl using an item to transform into a pop star. So yes, Gem and the Holograms is a magical girl show. There's like the original She-Ra, which is about a princess using a magic sword to transform into a Valkyrie warrior with a flying horse to fight bad guys. And that like predates Sailor Moon. That did the magical girl fighting bad guys before Sailor Moon did. And then there's like Rainbow Bright, and I know people, they like think of Rainbow Bright as like a preschooler show, and it kind of is, and they like equate it more to like the Care Bears. But if you look at the building blocks of Rainbow Bright, that is a magical girl show. It's about a girl, she has magical powers, and she fights bad guys using her magical powers. It's a magical girl show. I think the closest Western show to come that comes to being a full trope magical girl show without just being like a Sailor Moon referential show is the early seasons of Winx Club. As an aside, have you seen what the Winx Club looks like these days? It looks like a girl's life supermarket magazine that comes with like free stickers and a toy. It's actually really sad. You know what's another show that I didn't mention when I recorded this originally, that I'm sure people are going to call me out on because I mentioned Winx Club? I always associate the two in my head. Is Witch, which never aired here. That's why I didn't mention it, because it just completely slipped my mind. From what I can see, that was also actually like a magical girl show that really, really knew how to do the magical girl thing without just repeating tropes. And actually, I was thinking about it, and you know what else is a really, really good magical girl thing, because it's not a show, is actually the Equestria Girl movies, like the My Little Pony Equestria Girl movies. That whole thing of like traveling to a different dimension and meeting a group of friends and having transformations and having like face-offs against antagonists, like that is straight up magical girl. So many of the magical girl shows before Sailor Moon were literally about like alien princesses coming to Earth and fitting into a different society, like a reverse isekai almost. So yeah, I just wanted to add that as well, especially the witch thing, because I just didn't think of it because it never aired here. But I know that's also a really good version of the magical girl show or book or magazine, all the different merchandise that came in. And I just wanted to add that. I didn't really know where else to put it. So yeah, don't correct me on that. And very often the reasons for this are like super calculated, and it feels really gross, but it's so calculated. See, magical girl shows, if you like put the label of magical girl show on your cartoon, you get like easy feminist points. And I'm not going into a conversation about feminism at all, but I just mean, you know what I mean? Like, it's very easy to sell your cartoon to people as being a quote-unquote feminist show if you slap the title of magical girl on it.
I'm just so sick of seeing woman oppressed a white man bad, especially when it's like, oh, this movie is made for you because it has a non-white female protagonist, you'll love it. And then the non-white female protagonist that I'm apparently supposed to love just because they look like me is a mouthpiece for the white man bad rhetoric, and I don't want to hear it. I lose all sense of relatability to them because their personality is garbage.
It's also like a really easy nostalgia prey at this point because Sailor Moon is so nostalgic for a lot of people. So if you lean on Sailor Moon, you can very easily get that nostalgia audience on your side. And then, like I said, the other reason is being a magical girl show, you can do like the whole woke points thing, or being like the hip with the kids by liking the same things and like referencing magical girl things, which again, because of the concepts of the original magical girl shows, tend to have an audience that tend to focus on like social issues, whether it be feminism or LGBT plus rights or concepts. The audience where those things are really important to them tend to be magical girl fans, or at least understand why magical girls are so popular. So if you make your show a magical girl show, it's very easy to get those eyes on you. I mean, that's the reason I watched Magical Girl Friendship Squad. It's the only reason it was brought up to me, apart from the fact that I really like magical girls. If you've spent any time on my Tumblr or Twitter or even my YouTube page, it's very obvious that I really like magical girls. And it works because I watched one episode at least going into it because of that reason. And like, the other reason why is when you do the things like this Magical Girl Friendship Squad does, and you appeal to like the jaded, cynical crowd by being like, haha, we understand what tropes are, haha, we're gonna poke fun at how ridiculous this is. Like, it's really easy to get an audience of like younger teenagers, I mean like 14, 13, who are just now learning about subverting tropes and seeing things for the first time, which are pointing out at childhood cartoons and shows and pointing out at certain tropes as ridiculous and not applying to the real world. So it's very easy to get like a teenage audience on the younger side because they're only discovering these things in story for the first time. So when you play it up as being jaded and cynical, it's very easy to get that audience on board. Which is again why this show is so strange, because it's like dropping F-bombs and talking about sex every other minute. So again, I'm like, who is this for? And you know, at the time of writing this and making this video, Japan is not interested in making pure magical girl shows anymore. Since Madoka Magica came out and showed that if you take a genre meant for little girls and make it appeal to an older boy demographic with disposable income by adding violence and fan service, you can make bank. Because a 21-year-old otaku is gonna have the $400 to spend on the fancy figurines that middle school girls are not going to have. So as a result, since Madoka Magica came out and was a massive success, the only magical girls shows coming out of Japan at the moment are ones that are like super cynical and super violent and super sexualized. And I don't know why this is, but like the magical girl shows aimed at like 21-year-old otakus, the characters are always drawn to be more and more childlike, whereas if you look at magical girl shows aimed at like middle school girls, the characters are drawn either looking like teenagers or even looking older than teenagers. But when it's like the super hyper what do they say in Clockwork Orange? Ultra violence, like the ultra violence thing, they always draw the characters looking like 10 years younger than they're supposed to be. It's just, it's something I've noticed, you know. But these are the only shows that Japan is currently making magical girl shows about, you know. It was Yuki Yuna as a hero, which don't watch it. There's Ore Maho Shoujo, I think, which is super transphobic. Don't watch it. And then there's like Magical Girl Sight, which is suffer porn, and Magical Girl Raising Project, which is just Battle Royale but with magical girls. Don't watch it. The only magical girl show still going that isn't like nostalgia fueled like Sailor Moon, that's actually meant for girls, is the Precure franchise. That is the only magical girl show currently coming out of Japan that isn't like suffer porn. And as a result, it seems like the Western cartoon industry have been trying to pick up the slack. I don't know if it's fueled by nostalgia for things like Sailor Moon, or if it is a response to the fact that there simply are no magical girl shows currently airing that aren't Precure. And on the one hand, I'm really happy to have any magical girl content at all, but on the other hand, I can't help but feel this isn't the way to do it. And this isn't going to do it for anyone. I like the Shoe Diamond poster though, that's a pretty good deep cut.